All right, it is the top of the hour, so let's get started. Hello, everyone, and welcome. I'm Jerry Yurchisin, a data science strategist here at Gurobi Optimization. I'm joined by my colleague, Thomas Braam. We are thrilled to be your moderators for today's discussion, the impact and uses of generative AI and optimization, what's next, hosted by Gurobi Optimization. Today, we have an exceptional panel of thought leaders who will give us their impressions on how generative AI tools can impact optimization, and we'll discuss what's possible today, and also maybe get a glimpse into what the future may hold. If you have any questions, please use the Zoom Q&A feature. We'll save time near the end of the hour for those questions. We were also joined by Jue from our technical team, who is a Gurobi technical account manager, who will also answer some questions throughout the discussion as well. Thanks again for joining us, and let's get started as we examine what's next for generative AI and optimization.
Okay, thanks, Jerry. Hello, everyone. I'm Thomas Braam, Senior DevOps Engineer at Gurobi and involved in some of our generative AI projects. Let's get started by just doing a quick 1 to 2 minute self-introductions by our panelists, starting with Dr. Zhan Li, Assistant Professor at Purdue University.
Thanks, Thomas. Hello, everyone. My name is Zhan Li. As you can see from my background, I'm an assistant professor at Purdue. I just started my career around 3 years ago. Before Purdue, I was a PhD, did my PhD at Carnegie Mellon University. My research background was focused on decomposition algorithms for mixed integer and nonlinear programming. So now with my research group, we are focusing on 3 different areas related to machine learning and optimization. So the first area is using machine learning to accelerate optimization algorithms. We also focus on embedding different types of constraints in different deep learning models. The recent area we work on is related to generative AI for optimization, which we will talk about a little bit later. We use large language model to explain optimization models. Besides doing research, I'm also a co-director of a Purdue industrial-sponsored consortium focused on optimization and data science.
Okay, thank you. Could you give the names of the tools that you have published?
Yeah, sure. The tool is called OptiChat, which is like a chatbot that can explain optimization models.
Okay, cool. Thank you. All right, next, Dr. Warren Hearnes, founder of OptiML AI.
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm Warren Hearnes, founder of OptiML AI, where I do consulting and I educate executives at the intersection of optimization, machine learning, and AI. For 25 years, I've been immersed in the practice of using math, computers, and data to make better, smarter decisions at big companies. And most recently, I was chief data scientist at Best Buy. My optimization and machine learning journey began back with my PhD research in reinforcement learning for robotic control back in the 1990s. I've held operations research roles and data science roles at public companies like Lucent Technologies, UPS, the Home Depot, Cardlytics, and Best Buy. I've written mixed integer programming models for factories, for transportation. I've created machine learning models for forecasting, for pricing and marketing. And I've used AI for text and computer vision. Now, I initially thought this year I was heading into retirement, but I found myself pulled back because this is a really fascinating time to work in this field. As chief analytics officer at Cardlytics and chief data scientist at Best Buy, I watched as machine learning and AI have seen significant growth in adoption and user base. And I think it's optimization's turn now with the help of generative AI. My vision is, imagine if you could build an optimization model as easily as having a conversation with your computer. Simply tell the AI what you need, and it helps you build a solution for you. That's the future I'm interested in exploring right now. And there's others that are pursuing this too. Companies like Gurobi, they're making big strides in this. And I personally think we're on the verge of something pretty big. We're going to be able to use AI for optimization in ways we didn't even think possible a few years ago. It's going to drive some innovation. It's going to help us rethink and reshape decision-making and unlock some new possibilities. So spoiler alert for the rest of this discussion, I'm very optimistic on the use of generative AI for optimization.
All right, thanks. Next, Dr. Irv Lustig from Princeton Consulting.
Yes, thanks. So I am the optimization principal at Princeton Consultants. However, if you ask the free version of ChatGPT, which I did a couple months ago, it says I'm a notable figure in the field of finance and investment, particularly known for my work as a portfolio manager and investor. I've held various positions at major financial institutions, and I'm recognized for my expertise in equity investments and market analysis. I wish. Or another on a different device, it says, I'm a notable figure in the field of education, particularly known for my work in special education. I've contributed to various educational practices and policies aimed at supporting students with disabilities. Something I don't wish for, but it's not true. And given my name, you can see that Gen AI doesn't know who I am. Now, actually, if you do go to ChatGPT and you pay for it, and you get the version that actually searches the web for answers, it will summarize that I'm a prominent figure in the field of operations research, optimization, and analytics. And I'm known for my significant contributions to linear and integer programming, optimization software, and applied analytics. Over the course of my career, I've worked in both academic and industry settings, which is all true. I started my career as a professor at Princeton University. I got known for creating pretty much what is known as the barrier algorithm in Gurobi. That I did some foundational work back in the early 90s in that. Then moved on, was one of the original developers of Cplex, and had various roles at Cplex optimization, well, really at iLog in product marketing and sales, and then IBM acquired iLog. Went back into research. I joined Princeton about 10 years ago, leading our optimization, sales, and implementation efforts in a wide variety of industries, building models and worrying about the deployment of applications from beginning to end, understanding a business problem, figuring out if the data is there, translating it into something that can deliver value, and worrying about deployment, not just technically, but how do you get people to use these things. I'm a certified analytics professional from Informs. I'm on the committee that's in the process of revising the exam for Informs CAP. I'm an Informs fellow, an Informs senior member. And I forgot to bring my hat. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Thomas and Jerry.
Yeah, we all miss your hat. Okay, so with generative AI becoming more ubiquitous, we probably all feel the organizations that we're in wanting to get in on it. What sort of goals do you have from your organization or research team to adopt generative AI? San, do you want to take it first?
Yeah, sure. So as I already mentioned in my intro, one of the areas we work on is to use generative AI to help practitioners understand optimization models. So just a little bit about the context. The motivation originated from my earlier internship when I was working for a company. One of the challenges they have is they have developed a very sophisticated algorithm and optimization models with millions of variables. And hopefully it can save their customers hundreds of millions of dollars per year. But then when they bring this optimization model to the customers, they are more comfortable with their Excel spreadsheet instead of the optimization model because the Excel spreadsheet is easily interpretable. So when I was a graduate student, I spent one summer as an intern developing a tool to help these practitioners to understand the scheduling model. It is one of the most tedious work I have done so far. So once I have seen these large language models came about, then I thought, well, maybe this is the perfect tool for helping practitioners understand what's going on in the optimization model. So that's why we started developing this toolbox called OptiChat, which can help practitioners answer all sorts of different questions, like if there are no solutions exist in the optimization model, how do you fix the infeasibility issue, right? So solvers like Gurobi can have this very nice IIS detection tool, but then that's something not so easy to interpret by the practitioners. But with the LLM combined with tools like Gurobi, it can help users answer those type of questions. And then sometimes, for example, in a real scenario, the truck driver may be familiar with one of the routes they are used to take, and the optimization model may suggest an alternative route, right? So then how do you explain this route is optimal instead of the others? So that's one of the things we are developing so far, although it's not perfect. I guess we will talk about maybe the hypes of Gen AI later on. But we already see some success. Maybe it can get around 80% accuracy for answering different types of questions, like counterfactual explanation or doing automatic sensitivity analysis. Yeah, so that's the goal of my research team in adopting generative AI for optimization.
So the tool is explaining infeasibility as well as models that can be solved, like explaining
so
the results.
Optimally why the solution optimal, or if the model is solved, you can ask all sorts of like sensitivity related question. If a parameter changes, how will the solution change, and so on.
Okay, all right, Warren.
Sure. Let me maybe be clear. AI assistance is the goal that I'm looking at right now, not full automation. I think we should walk before we run. So there's probably 3 or 4 things. One is to democratize the access to optimization. There is a barrier to entry about knowing about modeling, having some specialized knowledge, and some manual effort to creating optimization models. If we can lower that barrier to entry through some natural language interactions, then I think that benefits everyone. Secondly, improving efficiency and productivity, doing things that automate the time-consuming tasks, like translating the problem into code, commenting the code, generating output and looking at that. That allows the people in the team, the human experts, to focus on some higher level decision making, leading to faster development cycles. And as San said, I love the idea of explaining why a model isn't feasible. I've done some projects for some smaller companies, and they, when something becomes infeasible, then you have to tell them, what is it that made it infeasible, or why did the model come up with the solution that it did? And explaining that to non-technical users is a great application. And then I guess finally, it's just let things iterate faster. Make the models more useful by allowing the business user to test and modify the constraints. That's sort of that explore versus exploit trade-off that you have in machine learning. I think the analogy in optimization is that we exploit the current formulation of the model and we find the optimal solution, but we need to explore other variations of constraints and model refinements to make the model better. And anything that we can do to help that iteration and model improvement and refinement, I think is a big win.
Okay. Irv.
So I personally have been sitting on the sideline watching all of this happen because I'm a cynic. And we'll probably talk more about that as later on in the panel. But I will say that things that I've observed. So one thing I could say is our company actually, when it first came out, tried some experiments. And one of the things that we're concerned about is trust and confidentiality with respect to data. So as an example, we tried to set up something as where somebody could type a query about data and ask a question, but could we turn that into a SQL query in a way that would, by using, say, OpenAI, but in a way where we would not be exposing any of our clients' data to OpenAI. And so we've been trying to figure out, from the perspective of confidentiality and trust, what do we do to make sure that we're not exposing that kind of information to these third parties? And that's a concern of ours. What I have also observed, however, are some good applications that I've seen that, and I will speak later about my feelings about the optimization model generation, because while Warren is excited about it, I'm extremely worried about it. And we'll talk about that later. But the two applications I will see, which kind of relates to what Ken was saying. So one is I saw recently, since we did the panel in Seattle, Microsoft gave a talk about a project that they're doing where the idea, the optimization that they're doing is to decide they have to expand their data centers and buy new equipment and decide like which computers and what sizes they're buying and which data centers they send them to. And it's a supply chain optimization problem. And this was all done by hand. So they built the optimization. But what was happening is the users would say, well, I don't understand why you chose to assign 50 units to data center A and 30 units to data center B. Why wasn't it the reverse? So they built an application that allows the user to type in those kinds of questions that are domain specific with respect to why did this happen, and then the optimization that they can use and develop an optimization problem to show that, hey, these KPIs would have changed had we made that decision. And so that gave an interactive way for users to understand what was happening in a specific application and why the optimization was producing the results it did. A second example, I think I forgot to mention Princeton Consultants, where I work, was the first Gurobi premier partner in the US. There's a second premier partner, Aimpoint Digital, that actually gave a Gurobi webinar a few months ago that looked into the idea of you have an application for optimization, and let's say it's a supply chain planning application, and you want to say, well, you want a user to be able to type a question that would say, what would happen if demand over the next year in the first 6 months increased for this set of products by 10%, and the last 6 months increased for those products by 15%, which would create a scenario which you would then optimize. And then you could compare the results of a demand growth scenario to your base case and see what the results are like. So this kind of interaction that is domain specific, and in both cases have the potential to deliver value to the end user, are the ones that we're looking at and trying to figure out where we could fit it with our customers.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so yeah, you mentioned that one of the goals you have at I guess at Princeton is that you want to shield the data from entering the OpenAI data center, and I guess that is one of the next questions I have. So, what kind of restrictions did you have imposed on your projects, or are you proactively imposing on the use of generative AI?
Well, right now we're erring on the side of caution. I mean, we have to, right? I mean, when we do work for clients, we sign non-disclosure agreements. Our standard master service agreements has confidentiality involved. I'm doing a project now with a healthcare company where we have access to patient data and protected health information. We had to get a huge insurance policy, cyber insurance policy, to protect that we wouldn't screw up, right? We don't do that work on our laptops. We are given laptops from our client to do that work on, because they've secured that environment to make sure that that kind of data is not going to leak out. So this is the kind of environment that we work in. So by erring on the side of caution, we're making sure that we're not leaking. And it's not just OpenAI. Now, we could look at and say, well, maybe we should start hosting our own LLM and look at things like Hugging Face and the other open source ones. Then you have to start addressing the question of, if you do that, where now you've controlled the data access, it's all sitting within your environment, nobody's touching, that you've got full control. Then the question is there business value, and was it worth the investment? Not just the investment of us developing the application, but if I got to run some huge training model on this type of thing, I got to worry about the computational cost and things like that. And now, are we getting that return on investment? So we look at it from a different angle, because to us, is this delivering value to our clients, and can we do so in a confidential way that creates trust? And trust has two parts: the trust in the data exposure, but also trust that the answers coming out are correct. And that's the other part that we have to really experiment more and make sure that we have that level of trust.
Okay. Warren, yeah, what is your view on like imposing restrictions on the projects that you're working on, or where you take pause?
Sure, I think you hit it on the head. Data privacy is the biggest concern that the companies that either I've worked for or are working with have. And so, if you're a really big company, you've got your tenant space in the cloud for the big enterprises. They already see all of your email. They see all of your documents. And so there is this level of trust if you're working with a Microsoft or a Google or an AWS that they have that security in place. You hit on one thing about the smaller local model usage. Maybe not for some of the big customers that you all are talking to at Princeton Consultants, but I think one of the benefits that I'm highlighting is that you have this longer tail of medium or small businesses who have optimization problems that they're not working on right now because they just don't know how to do it. So I think that there is the ability to use some smaller local models. I can run a 27 billion, the Gemma 2 27 billion parameter model, or DeepSeek's Coder, which is about 10 gigabytes. The other one I said is about 14 gigabytes. I can run those on my desktop PC here. And so you can do some things that are local, and you don't necessarily have to. And then I think one of the research problems is we don't have to have this one ring binds them all, or one large language model does everything type of approach. I don't need, if I'm going to be creating an optimization model, I don't need something that can write that in the form of a Shakespeare sonnet. I just need something that's very focused. And so I think with some of the smaller local models, or some of the things that the academic researchers can do, like SAN, and get it where it's working specifically for the optimization models, it'll bring costs down significantly, and it'll give the enterprise risk and compliance at these companies a little bit less heartburn.
Yeah, and I guess this kind of paradigm, the agentic paradigm, I think is getting more popular. So it's getting more accessible, I think, for most developers at this point. Yeah, Dr. Zhan, what about you? Where do you take pause?
Yeah, so maybe I want to add upon what Warren and Irv have already mentioned. Certainly, data privacy is a big issue, especially for industry. For academics, maybe it's less so. But I think I'm more on the optimistic side. There are different technical ways you could address those issues. For example, we are currently working with a company on data sharing projects. For example, there are techniques like differential privacy and federated learning you can use to sort of alleviate those data sharing issues with other companies. For example, a simple use case is if you have, let's say, an iPhone, you are recording your voice on your phone, but Apple is already using your voice to train their Siri models using federated learning, right? But your data still stay on your phone. It's the weight of the machine learning model that get passed to the cloud. So maybe for LLM and similar project, you could use similar ideas of federated learning such that you still keep the data on your server, but then it's the model that get trained better. If you participate in this type of schemes, then you can get some reward from participating. Yeah, that's my view on it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and then I have a follow-up question for you. So to what extent do you think the current sentiment regarding generative AI is hype, and how much is reality? Or as differently, how big do you think the gap is between the two, and what does this gap consist of?
Yeah, so I think overall my stand maybe a little bit less optimistic than Warren, but more optimistic than Irv. So we have different opinions here in this panel. So overall, I think there are still many limitations of generative AI. There are hype saying that artificial general intelligence is going to be achieved in the next 2 years or so, and it's going to replace many jobs. I think that's a little bit much of a hype. But on the other hand, you see a very remarkable trajectory of moving forward. For example, if you look at those large language models, when, let's say, ChatGPT 3.5 was first released, sure, it did a pretty good job in natural language type of task, but it really struggles at math, right? It even make mistakes on very simple arithmetic type of calculations. Certainly, you are not going to use that directly for your optimization models. But now, 3.5 has been released for around 2 years. But now, if you take a look at the recent OpenAI's O1 model, right, it really make big progress in solving a very hard math problem and improving its reasoning capabilities, right? So if you take a look at this trajectory in the last 2 years, of course, we don't know how this trajectory will extrapolate in the next few years. Let's assume it's like a linear extrapolation in the next few years. So I would say it will make a quite tremendous progress in terms of helping people to formulate optimization models or interpret optimization models, as we already mentioned. So I think that is sort of the reality for me. It's still not perfect yet, but I'm very optimistic in the next few years it will become more capable to solving the problem we are interested in.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and Warren, give us the hype train.
Yeah, so even though I'm very optimistic, I do understand that large language models have significant benefits, but they also have a lot of limitations. I think when people look at the large language models, and you're trying to do this, and I've done this with a few projects, you're pretty amazed at what it can do. Up to about you can get to like I've heard it called the 70% solution, and then you start hitting some of those limits of, can it do it consistently, or is it creating the model the right way, or why did it, talking about consistency, why did it give me the right answer that time and the wrong answer this time? So I do think that human expertise remains essential. They can handle some of the computational heavy lifting, but we still need some human in the loop, and that's why I'm still a AI assistant, not AI automation. Going into the agentic AI, we might be able to have it do smaller problems and tie those smaller problems together, kind of like you're solving a math proof or something like that. You can get something that does something really well so often that you just let it go. But I also realized that this field is evolving so rapidly that something that didn't work even 6 months ago might work on, as San said, OpenAI's O1 model did some really cool things. You can use LangGraph to do some really cool things and create some functions and agents that were not available, even earlier this year. So I do think it's evolving rapidly. There's going to be hype and reality, but give it a chance, try it.
Mm-hmm. And Irv, what about you?
Well, as Ken sort of alluded to, I'm on the let's put our brakes on train. Just a couple of things that I'm concerned about. One is, which Warren alluded to a little bit, is there's a trust issue. It's like, how do we know that the answer is right? At the Seattle meeting in Informs, there was a really interesting panel discussion with Charles Isbell, the provost at Wisconsin, whose research has been in AI, Michael Littman, who's currently at NSF, and he's recently been named the Associate Provost for AI at Braam. And it was moderated by Cynthia Rubin, who's a professor at Duke, and she's the winner of the AAAI Squirrel Award, which is kind of the, quote, Nobel Prize of AI. And one of the things that Charles said as a concern that he has for Gen AI, and they were thinking of it not just in our space, but more globally, if you want to think of it that way, or widely, is that a lot of people are starting to use large language models to create content, just do writing, okay? There's concern in education now that, students are not learning how to write because they can go to an LLM and have them write a paper or write an essay. And the thing that Charles said, which I thought was really insightful, he says, when you do that, the only way you know, you have to become an editor. You have to look at the content and be able to edit it and to know that it was right and it is saying the right things. And the only way you become a good editor is by knowing how to write. And if we apply that now in the optimization world with the model types of stuff that Warren's excited about, the only way that you're going to know that the model that's produced by an LLM is right, okay, and that so that you can edit it is by knowing how to model in the first place. And I think this is the part that if we start trusting these types of things without knowing how to edit, without being able to evaluate that this is correct or not, then we're getting into kind of a danger zone. And I will tell you, as work, in our company, one of the services we offer is a model review and validation service. And we work with clients, a lot of which come from Gurobi, who basically write crappy models. And we have to go in and they're like, why doesn't it perform well? Or what's not going right? Or what have you? Or, why is it on 10% of our data that it doesn't look right? And we have to go in and analyze their models and find the problems in their models that are causing performance or answers that are not trustable. All right. And that's a service that we offer because A, we know how to write really good models, and therefore we know how to edit. So, I think I've seen some of the stuff that you guys at Gurobi have done, and it's toy. All right. In the real world, there's a lot of hard models that you have to write, a lot of difficult things that you end up modeling. And unless I don't see how LLM, which is based upon probabilities of saying this is what I think is right, because it is a probabilistic model at the end of the day, is going to necessarily produce something that we can trust from a modeling framework. So, I'm also, being the cynic that I am, one of the things that concerns me, for example, is that there was something I read recently where somebody says, where's AI going in the future? And everything was about Gen AI. They basically said that what we used to call AI, which is a broad field with many types of applications, and we could even throw optimization as one of them, all right, is now Gen AI is equal to AI. And I really have a problem with that. So what I'm concerned about is that there's going to be something that happens in the AI arena, and I don't know where or when it's going to happen, that's going to be a catastrophic failure. It could be that it launches a nuclear weapon, or it causes some major, catastrophe and people losing lives. I don't know what that's going to be, but I think it's going to happen. And when it happens, everybody's going to say, let's slow down and think about how much we can trust these AI agents, whether it's an LLM or a machine learning model or what have you. You talk about things like that are really terrible that people are doing with AI now, which are, deep fake pornography that is created about celebrities. And, there's these other things that are going on that are really kind of scary. That AI agents are being used now to help defraud senior citizens and make phone calls using an LLM. So we've got to figure out how to control this and build trust. All right. And, related to the trust issue, earlier is when I talked about the privacy of data, OpenAI has already shown they cannot be trusted. They're getting sued by the New York Times. And the reason is because they went out and they grabbed content behind the Times paywall and used it to generate text. So if the New York Times has uncovered this bad usage by OpenAI, I am really scared about trusting them, right? Warren mentioned the big three: Microsoft, AWS, Amazon, and Google, as big companies who have built that trust over time, right? And you don't hear about things, and if they were, that they would take a knock. So this is all about the trust that we have in producing these things and making sure that they're reliable and that we know that we have the ability to edit. Because if we start throwing off the ability to write optimization models to a machine, who's going to know that they're right?
I would like to ask one clarifying question. It sounds like you have experience with people writing bad models. So the concern isn't necessarily that AI is going to write a bad model. It's that there's going to be bad models out there, and AI might write a bad model, but your company also sees quite a few people writing bad models. Is it, what standard should we hold the AI to, rather that we're not holding the people to, or are we holding to the same standard?
Well, it's kind of like spam. You know it when you see it, right? And that's the challenge, right? Is that I remember very early on, about 2 years ago, Segev Wasserstrug from IBM gave a talk about using Gen AI to generate an optimization model, and he put up this example. It was a pretty simple problem. Now remember, this is 2 years ago. Technology's better today, et cetera. And I looked at it and I stared at it and I said, there's a bug in your model. I could spot it. He didn't spot it, and he's a pretty smart guy, right? So, maybe that's what we have to figure out is, I mean, there's a broader question in the optimization that you can always say is, how do we know that a model is right? What do we do to test the model? What are the ways that, and this is true AI or not, right? And I think that's, so, I don't have the answer on that, right? I mean, I know that there's a lot of bad models out there that we don't see, right? We only see it when it becomes a critical problem for a customer. It's not scaling, it's not producing right answers. They've built up appropriate testing frameworks. I mean, it's all those are you only find out about a problem when somebody sees a problem, but sometimes they have a problem and they don't know they have a problem.
So does anybody want to respond to this? Like, how do we validate a model that is generated by an LLM?
Well, so yeah, I'm hopefully can talk about this from an academic viewpoint. What my limited experience doing this for medium-sized businesses is that I guess there's two levels. One is the model completely wrong? I think, in my experience, the business owner can look at the output of a model at the size of companies that I'm working with, and they can say, yeah, that doesn't work, and we can iterate through and figure out why we have put in a constraint or missed a constraint or put in an objective function that doesn't truly reflect reality. Then there's the level that Irv is hitting on also, which is it might come up with the right solution, but it might take 4 hours. Whereas maybe it could be done in 5 minutes. So that's a little bit different. But at that longer tail that I'm looking at, it's more visible than not to the business owner that something is fundamentally wrong with that production plan or that route that says the model is wrong.
Yeah, and that's what we use in Gen AI or not, right? Is you show answers, you iterate, et cetera. And so understanding, and in that case, Warren, you've become the editor, right? You've been able to get that feedback. Like, again, I've said it's analogous to spam. You know it when you see it. So you see it, in this case, your business owner has seen it and said, oh, wait a minute, that's not right. Oh, okay, let me go and add a constraint. And in that particular case, I am guessing that you say, okay, I got that first model from Generative in my LLM. I started with that, and I've uncovered another constraint. But now that I've seen the model, I'm going to go in and write the constraint myself, as opposed to asking the LLM to do it. I guess I'd probably want to know about that. And so there's yes, I mean, that's kind of how we do it. I mean, we have other ways when we're building applications for validating solutions. Like we write, it's called a solution validator, which is I have somebody who's not an optimization person write a program that's going to take the input data, an optimization solution, validate, does it satisfy the constraints without looking at any of our optimization code. I could imagine actually a LLM writing a solution validator. I could potentially see that happening, but the only way we know if we have, so we use that to say, okay, we ran a bunch of data sets, we run it through the validator says yes. When the validator says no, we still have to say, is the bug in our model or is the bug in the validator, which can happen.
Okay, Sun?
Yeah, so I guess from an academic point of view, I think Irv already alluded to there are some research in using LLM to test data generated by the LLM. Maybe before you go to the human type of test, which can be quite expensive, you can use another validation LLM as a filter to say what is the quality of this optimization model. And then at the end of the day, because optimization usually involve high stakes decisions, I agree, it has to be human in the loop in this process. Maybe you run some simulations to test this model, but that would be much more expensive than automatic testing.
Right. Thanks for all your inputs there. That's the hype, the reality, the pitfalls, all of that sort of stuff is a massive conversation. We could probably go on and on and on and on for another several hours about that. But I'm going to sort of change the topic a little bit. So generative AI is evolving super quickly. Like every day, something new is out there, it seems, and new models are out there. And we have massive investments by a bunch of different companies out there. So how are you staying up to date with generative AI? Like, what resources have you found helpful? Have you any particular processes that you follow, or any advice for people to make sure that they're getting the information that they want and need? I'll start with San. I'll start with you.
Yeah, so I usually follow two resources. One is a website called deeplearning.ai. I think it's started by Andrew Ng. They usually have some short courses related to generative AI, like how do you do prompt engineering, how do you do retrieval augmented generation. So it's quite up to date. They also invite CEOs of startups to give some short courses on that platform. The other resource is you can follow some of the, let's say, the blogs written by OpenAI employees or some of those tech companies. They usually write some summary of recent papers in generative AIs if you want to dig into the math. Yeah, that would be the two resources I recommend.
Okay, great. Warren, your thoughts?
Yeah, so I like to basically drink from the fire hose, which is Twitter, and that's fantastic for both the content and also the availability of their specific large language model Grok, which has access to all the tweets that are coming in. I also like to try different. I'm pretty much a you can tell by my PhD research in reinforcement learning that just the fundamental way I learn is through trial and error. I want to go out there to OpenAI and use their API, test out Perplexity. Haven't done as much with Gemini yet, but their new models look really interesting. I go to local meetups and learn about LangChain and LangGraph. I test out open source projects. I use LM Studio on my PC here to test out different smaller models from Hugging Face, and just generally hands-on learning from trying.
That sounds good. I like that idea. Irv?
Well, I wish I was like Warren, where I had all that time to go and experiment. I depend upon colleagues, who are doing things internally. There's different things that I watch for talks, right? So like I mentioned, that Microsoft thing was actually a talk that came from MSOM, one of the societies within Informs. There's Data Science Central. I subscribe to, they have a weekly newsletter. So I kind of like what I'm looking for is news that says, here's something that somebody did and it delivered value. And those are the types of things that I look for in terms of just following news and hearing about different things. There's actually been some work that was done by the practice section of Informs, led by Segev, who I mentioned earlier, looking into different applications of Gen AI. One of the things, and I think they published this in the Analytics magazine, they did a very interesting experiment to say they started with a business problem at a pretty high level and then said, how would it go through and use the LLM to do the tasks for a project that are part of the Informs job task analysis that is the basis of the Certified Analytics Professional exam. So there are 7 domains that starts with understanding the business problem, translating the business problem to an analytics problem, understanding your data, choosing a modeling technique, building the model, deployment, which is technical, as well as getting people to understand what the answers are, and finally, lifecycle management. So they had the LLM say, they presented a problem, I think it related to picking up bikes, like the electric bikes for charging or something like that. And then had the LLM say, what are the questions that you would do to accomplish each of the steps? And I thought that was kind of quite interesting. So I hear about these types of things that are going on from colleagues and going to conferences and listening to talks that, because I want to stay at the high level. I'm not at, as I say, I wish I had the time and Warren to play around and Shanna, you can do it sitting in the academic hallways. But, I'm always working on projects that we're getting paid for that are delivering value. And the easiest way I can do that is work on what I can work on. If I have some dead time, then I start exploring and playing around.
Right, great. Yeah, it's always important to try and stay on top as best you can, but it's always difficult. So with respect to optimization, what would you think? What would you say would make generative AI more useful or most useful for those for optimization practitioners or researchers or anyone in the field? So yeah, what we can do, what would be best to get the most use out of generative AI? So San, I'll start with you again.
Yeah, so from my perspective, in terms of academic research, what would be really useful is we can develop a data set for optimization. Because if you look at the advance in AI and machine learning, it all depends on high quality data set. If you look at fields like computer vision, right, they used to solve very small scale problems. But at some point, they developed this data set called ImageNet, which has tens of millions of images that were labeled by human. Then that's when this field started taking off. But in terms of generative AI for optimization, right now we have some smaller scale data set like toy problems, maybe hundreds of optimization models. Then you can do things like natural language to optimization modeling, but it's more like a testing data set rather than you can use this data set for training LLMs, right? So in order to get a data set for training LLM, you need a much bigger problems and also much larger number of data points, maybe tens of thousands, but it's going to be quite expensive. So that's where I think maybe some collaboration between academia and industry will be really helpful to make high accuracy LLM tailored for optimization models.
Great. Warren, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think I would think about it in the evolution of solvers as well. Solvers got better and better over the years. We had newer algorithms. You could solve bigger and bigger problems. So similar with Gen AI, with large language models, we need to continue to identify the issues, especially with accuracy, and improve on that. Let us get from, if it's that 70% solution that we're at right now, hey, can we get it up to 95% that it's right? The goal would be 100, but we may not ever get there. We have a lot of interesting challenges to overcome, and there's some ways to do that people a lot smarter than me can figure out. I think we can focus the LLMs on the understanding of the particular optimization concepts. Not necessarily fine tune it, but different variations of RAG can help you get to the point where it understands what the user wants and then goes out to some repository of information. It could be models that have already been written. It could be, it could be the Ample book. It could be Gurobi Pi. It could be the documentation. You all are doing that with the Gurobi AI modeling assistant. I would say go out and see what's available out there and how it understands those particular optimization concepts. And then I guess lastly is for the end user, if you can make the UI interactive and visual so you can get feedback faster. I think those are ways, multimodal Gen AI can see graphs and do things and get and give feedback. That's critical as well.
Great. Irv, your thoughts?
So yeah, as I mentioned earlier, I'm interested in things that I know that are going to deliver value to our clients. And I mentioned the two examples, the one from Microsoft where they were using it to ask questions that would allow somebody to understand why the optimization model came up with that answer. And that relates to Chan's research that he spoke of as well. He's probably thinking of it in a more general case, and they applied it in a specific case. It'll be interesting to see if the kinds of research that he's doing can be generalized so that I can use that kind of technology in various domains, et cetera. And the other example of using it to help create scenarios. I am not sure that the angle of using LLMs to generate optimization models is going to deliver the value. It's not replacing the hard part of doing optimization. If we look at our projects, when we do an optimization project from beginning to end, starting with the business problem, less than 15% of our time is spent writing a model. So what value do I get by leveraging this tool? And I know Warren might say, well, we make people more exposed to it or what have you, but success goes way beyond just having a model. There's so many other things that you have to do to get right to make an optimization application deliver value. And so for me, whereas I appreciate that line of research and I appreciate the kinds of things that you guys, Thomas and Jerry, have worked on with respect at Gurobi, I don't think it's going to help us close that gap, because the fundamental issue often is recognition. Right? How do people recognize they have the opportunity to apply optimization? And often it takes folks like us to make us walk up and say, hey, wait a minute, that's an optimization problem. So we still have that. We have to get over that boundary before we get people, using a tool like, hey, I can write an optimization model, and also recognize that it's such a small part of really delivering the entire value of an application.
Okay. Yeah, I definitely agree with that. It's an art and a science all blended into one.
Absolutely.
So it definitely makes it difficult to automate. But maybe there's some instances where it could speed up some development but yeah, it's a small piece, baby steps, I guess. So I think we're getting close to the bottom of the hour, so let's pivot to some audience questions.
Yeah, so I think I found one. I like the wording. So how do you think the field of optimization can improve the field of generative AI? Shouldn't the senior guide the junior? I guess this is more of an academic question for Dr. Tan.
Yes.
But if anybody else can chime in afterwards, feel free.
Yeah, so I guess there are different angles to look at this. If you go to a conference like Informs, there are two aspects of research. First, how do we use generative AI to help optimization folks, which is the focus of this panel today, right? But there are other angles, like how do you use your optimization expertise to help large language model. There are certain angles of research here. For example, how do you compress a large model to a smaller model? That is an optimization problem. And also there are tasks related to, if you get the output from the LLM, how do you reverse engineer the prompt, right? So that is also a discrete optimization problem. I think they can go both ways. There are ways where you can use optimization to solve a very challenging problem in the area of generative AI.
Warren or Irv, do you have any thoughts? Anything you want to add to?
I think he was in the best position to answer that question.
Just to make sure.
But I will say there was some. I heard a talk about this is research by Elise Stefanik, I think is her name. She's a professor at Brown. And their lab is they're trying to look at the insides of the neural networks that generate the LLMs and trying to find out what part of the neural network generated a specific type of thing? And is there something you can learn from that? And I actually think there's an optimization problem sitting there. I'm not exactly sure what. I thought it was kind of interesting. The other part is, let's not forget that a lot of what's inside neural networks and what makes them work are optimization algorithms inside of these things. And there's probably, I'm not on that side of the technology of what makes these things really work. And, I think there's some possibilities that we might see people figuring out how to leverage the power of optimization to either improve these models or improve the computation, et cetera.
So another question is, so we sort of hit on this a little bit in terms of, being able to make sure that models that are produced with LLMs, are good. What are your thoughts on any sort of dynamic reformulating or resolving of models based on questions or prompts? So maybe something that's a smidge of a little bit of a step past just scenario generation, but actually sort of manipulating a model or editing it. Do you think that is, in the near future possibly?
I think there are already some techniques where you can go back and forth between the LLM and the optimization model. For example, if you formulate a model, then execute that, and then if it's not good enough, or if it even have bugs sometimes, so you can refeed that model to the LLM, ask it to regenerate the model and going back and forth. And then at the end of the stage, there might be human in the loop saying, you gave us some suggestions to the LM, asking it to fix the errors or generating the model dynamically.
Yeah, I like the idea of well, first, the scenario generation I think is really important, but even using the custom GPT that you all have at Gurobi, you can have it do one of the sample problems that it has. And then if I went in and I said, okay, so play devil's advocate and tell me what are some things about this model that the user might have some angst about employing it. And the custom GPT came up with 10 or 11 different possibilities of new constraints, of new ways of saying, well, let's make this more flexible, or let's do some of these other types of things. So again, I don't think we're there yet in terms of having it generate these things automatically and without error. But I do challenge everybody that's listening to go out and try some of the things that are already out there and see what works. And you all are experts at whatever particular field you're in. You're going to say, yeah, I got this right, and it got that wrong, and it got that wrong. But 6 months from now, we might have fixed that, or somebody else might have fixed that. And so, I'm still optimistic that that we're going to get to the point where it can try some different things. And I think of an LLM as it might be like a first year grad student who you give some specific directions to, or it might be like a really knowledgeable advisor / friend that you're asking things. Now, as Irv said, you got to be the editor, but it is allowing me to fill in holes that I don't have in my expertise. I can have it play devil's advocate. I can have it, I can learn new things. I can talk with Gemini like you see on the commercials and have it tell me about quantum computing. And when I ask it a question to clarify something, and it asks me a question. So that's I really am. You can see that I'm optimistic about this.
Great, great. So it seems that we are pretty much at the end of our time. So I don't know, in about maybe 20 seconds or so, go around the horn one more time. Your final words of advice to the group. Irv, I'll start with you.
I guess my summary would be careful out there. just recognize the risks, recognize the trust issues, find the applications that deliver value, and understand how to not understand that value and understand the cost of delivering those values, both computationally as well as individually. That's where I, would like to concentrate on.
Great. Warren?
Yeah, I would say that this is a brand new field. Go out and try things and learn. We've got 3 experts on here who have varying opinions on different things. We still got a lot of research to do in this area, and so I think it's an exciting time. Figure out what you're interested in, and if there's an area that you can see that it's not working well, you can either let somebody else fix it, or maybe that's a research area for you.
Great. And San, finish with you.
Yeah, I would like to second Warren. Just go ahead and try it, especially for like graduate students thinking about doing research. You could always discuss your research idea with ChatGPT and generative AI and treat it as a research collaborator. That's how I do all the time, especially for interdisciplinary research. I'm sure you will find values in that.
Okay, with that, I think we reached the end of our panel discussion. So thank you to all the panelists. I think we could have spent another 2 hours on this, especially if we were to go more into the technical aspects of the matter. But yeah, we gotta leave it here. So apologies, we couldn't get to all the questions. But yeah, also thank you to all the attendees for showing up. And I personally hope we can have more editions around this topic. So catch you next time. Bye.
Thank you.